Okay, let's dive right into this explainer, because this is a fascinating one. When we think of the birth of a nation, right, we usually picture loud, booming cannons, massive public declarations, and armies marching in broad daylight. We picture all those grand events that were written down and proudly proclaimed for the whole world to see. But what if the true foundation of independence was actually laid completely in the dark? Today, we're unpacking a really brief but honestly incredibly potent piece of text from our source material, Shadow Allies, The Secret War for American Independence. We're going to examine the exact words used here to see how they kind of completely reframe our entire understanding of history. Now, I want you to listen closely to this exact quote from our source, "The secret war that created America." Just let the magnitude of those words linger in the air for a second. We aren't just talking about some minor side campaign or a tiny intelligence operation here. The text is making a massive, definitive claim. By calling it the secret war that created the nation, the author is taking covert actions from the absolute margins of history and putting them straight onto center stage.
Which, immediately brings up a super compelling question. If it was a secret war, who exactly was fighting in the shadows? We are so used to the standard, polished narrative of how this nation was founded. But this phrase, it challenges that perception entirely. It forces us to stop and really ask who the hidden players were, operating just out of sight, pulling the unseen strings of history to make all those big public victories possible.
Section 1. The Hidden Foundation.
Consider the stark contrast here between public and private. On one hand, we have public independence. The loud, known narrative of signed documents, famous speeches, the events literally everyone studies in school. But beneath all of that lies the secret war, the quiet, unseen mechanics, the clandestine operations, the whispered alliances happening behind closed doors. You truly cannot have that loud, public victory without the quiet, foundational groundwork.
So, the absolutely crucial point is hidden right here in these two words, created America. By isolating this phrase, we can see what the author is really trying to tell us. This secret conflict wasn't just a footnote in a history book. It wasn't an afterthought or some parallel event. It was the actual engine of creation. The text insists that without the shadows, the country as we know it simply wouldn't exist. The creation itself is literally rooted in secrecy.
Moving on to our next section, the anatomy of a secret war.
So, what actually is a secret war? Well, it's a conflict fought entirely out of sight. It relies on hidden mechanisms. Think of covert funding, smuggled supplies, and unrecorded negotiations, rather than purely conventional, open-field battlefield tactics. It's basically the war beneath the war. It's the entire infrastructure of conflict that the enemy, and honestly often the public, is never allowed to see.
It means that the ultimate victory relied on not just battles,
but shadows. Those unrecorded meetings in dimly lit rooms where the real trajectory of the future was being decided. And secrets. Keeping, trading, and weaponizing those secrets was just as pivotal and just as necessary as any physical confrontation. The silence was literally as powerful as the cannons.
Which brings us to Section 3, defining Shadow Allies.
Shadow allies are partners acting in the dark, providing crucial, unseen support for the cause of independence. Combining the word shadow with allies completely shifts how we think about international partnerships. Normally, we think of allies as nations standing shoulder to shoulder, signing grand public treaties in the daylight. But a shadow ally? That's a whole network of covert operations. It's vital support that absolutely cannot be acknowledged for fear of diplomatic retribution or public exposure.
And the implications of this are staggering. We're talking hidden partnerships, unseen support systems, unspoken agreements, and the covert alignment of goals. The text implies a massive, highly coordinated effort that was deliberately and carefully kept completely off the public record. These weren't just friendly neighbors offering a quick wave across the border. No, these were calculated, high-stakes alliances operating entirely under the radar. It takes an insane amount of discipline to coordinate goals on this scale without leaving a paper trail.
And that leads us to our final section, the creation of America.
it's such an incredible contrast. Today, we celebrate this bright, modern symbol, tossing the American flag emoji into everyday text messages and public celebrations. But this casual, bright symbol was forged in the murky, unspoken shadows of a clandestine war. The contrast between how we view the result today and how that result was actually achieved back then is just stunning.
So bring this whole narrative full circle. We return to the primary title, The Secret War for American Independence.
It serves as this powerful, permanent reminder that independence wasn't just won on open battlefields with drums beating and flags flying. It was won in the shadows, by shadow allies whose contributions were specifically designed to be invisible, and whose names might never fully make it into the mainstream spotlight.
And because of that deliberate invisibility, the unknown remains. When you really think about it, it's kind of awe-inspiring. Our source text forces us to recognize a fundamental truth about our past. A vast amount of history was deliberately, carefully hidden by the very people who lived it. It's not just that we forgot what happened, it's that they designed it to be unknown from the very beginning.
So I'll leave you with this. If the defining conflict that birthed a nation was, at its very core, a secret war fought by shadow allies, how much of America's creation still remains in the shadows today? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the narrative, and keep exploring the history that's hiding just out of sight.